It looks like you're still in a hotel doing your tour. Where are you located today?
We're in upstate New York, somewhere. It's called Cortland. I think it's a few miles from Ithaca.
Okay. Do you do a lot of like browsing around the area, or you feel you've through the years you've already done that?
What do you mean?
Like, do you get out, walk around and wait, to your show, or do you kind of have a routine where you just kind of stay to yourself?
Well, I do go to the store. Usually I go to pharmacies. I end up going to a local pharmacy. And when I'm at home in New York City, I'll just walk around and listen to what they're playing on the radio in the pharmacy, which is less and less interesting. But yeah, no, I'm in a really beautiful place, but there's no sidewalk. It's strip malls. My niece went to community college here, and she told me that they didn't have a cafeteria on the weekends. So she had to walk downhill on the highway every weekend to go to the Dollar Tree to buy herself some
Something.
ramen noodles. Yeah. So that's my comment on certain places. It's not really, you can't. I did have some good food though, so whatever.
The music that they play, I mean, obviously you can only go up until like 2005, or you have a music-y thing now. It's really, oldies or nothing.
I always wonder about that. Why is it that we hear the same songs now that I heard when I was a kid 40 years ago? And
Yeah,
you're telling me there's some kind of a licensing, or
it's more about making people feel comfortable when they're in there shopping. That material is inoffensive. Popular music today, you just couldn't play that. If it's too rappy or whatever, there's a quiet blend. It's Susu Sudia forever. It never dies.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard myself playing on the supermarket in my neighborhood. It's very inoffensive music. The stuff I've heard myself, of course.
I said it felt good though to hear your stuff.
It snuck in the playlist. Well, yeah, I guess it feels good up to a point, and then you go, "What have I done?"
Let's do it.
Madeleine Peyroux, welcome to the Jazz, Blues, and R&B podcast and radio show, period.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The release date is June 28th. You're hitting the road now.
I was just going to say we're on the road because we were hoping to release the record sooner when we planning on making it.
I believe that each song has a great narrative. I think you can explain them. I've read the blurb on each song, and I'm like, oh, I think it'd be a lot of fun to hear you talk about the song and then play it. I think you get a lot more depth. So people are missing out on it because they haven't like pre-listened to it. So it's new to them. You had a landmark birthday that came up on April 18th. And how does that feel to hit that landmark?
Honestly, this record is the landmark that I'm grateful for. It so happens that I turned 50 this year as well. I mean, turning 50, I don't know how much you want to hear me talk about that because I haven't really lived it yet. I remember George Carlin saying that when you're in your 20s, you think you know everything and you don't know anything. When you're in your 30s, you still don't know anything, but you don't know. And when you're in your 40s, you know something, but you don't know you know. And then when you're in your 50s, you're supposed to know and know and you could just have fun. And that's the only wisdom I can impart. I really hope that George Carlin is right. I think he probably is. I think it's going to be a great thing to be alive in my 50s. I'm grateful for the opportunity to still be working and, having somewhat of a long career so far. This new record is keeping me going more than any of the above, frankly. It's a project that came to me like a gift in a way. I didn't know what these songs would become. I just knew that they came to me, and these songs that we wrote are my way of facing the world. So I need this record in order to be in the world right now. It's a tough world to be in, to be awake in.
I think that's the word, awake. Yeah. To be knowledgeable.
Et puis, comme ça, sans penser à ce que je dis, je rentre chez moi, tra-la-la-la-la, dans mon petit appart à Paris. Quelle idée gauche, monsieur le chauffeur, mais pas question d'y être à...
I'm going to kind of bounce around. I just have one blurb before we get into the album, is that I saw you were 22 years old. You were opening for Sarah McLachlan, and it was for your first album. And I used to work at Live at the World Cafe. We played your first album heavily. Philly loved you. It was the Spectrum. You opened up. And normally when an opening artist comes in, they kind of wrestle and not really focused. But that whole Philly crowd was sitting, waiting for you, and bang, you came out. And it was wonderful. You put on such a great show. Get a town that's like way behind you. It must have felt really good.
Yeah, Philadelphia. I don't know if I've lost that, but that was a Philly and Portland, actually, to be totally honest with you, were the two places that I had that experience around the same time. And it was a bit shocking. I spent most of my 20s being sort of, as you know, gobsmacked or just in awe of the process, because I really didn't come from a place where I knew what the music industry was. I didn't come out of performing arts education. I didn't have any training, and I never expected to be a singer. I dreamed about it, but I really didn't believe in it. And as it was still happening, I was always skeptical, which, you know, now makes a lot more sense to me. It's good to be skeptical in this world of everything. I didn't miss any opportunities, I don't think. I think that the only truth that I'm ever going to really understand is that being in the music helps us all be together. And it helps us be together in that moment. And that's that remains really the sacred aspect of it all. The chance to create a beautiful memory as a result of that is probably the only thing I can hope for. I'm grateful, that if an audience wants to be there, it's because we're all part of something. And I'm really grateful. I'm really lucky to be part of it. And that's all it is we're sharing something that exists outside of us, And I'm not much for religion. I'm not much for using words to describe this type of territory that we try to inhabit. But music really does give me the spiritual nourishment that I need to live. And it has become really the center of my world because it's a practice. So it's a little bit like a religion in that aspect for me.
I think a lot of people during the pandemic, when you are in the stress, the way we were, what do you gravitate to? And, I was like, oh my God, I love the Beatles. I was like, I couldn't get enough of the Beatles. Like they were there for me. So music in general, I didn't have the TV on. It was always music. So I think people realize then it's time to congregate again. That's extremely important, just to be in the same room with people and to experience community.
Absolutely. I think that we realize now how much more important it is and how precious it is. But it's also a healing. It's an opportunity for really great things to happen without much effort, because somehow human beings are social animals. We we don't really, need to be told to enjoy how to just enjoy being, or we can't, so this is the thing, is getting together, like you said, in community for something that is not challenging to people is healing for them. It's not a challenge, hopefully. And that's what matters.
Upside down, Daddy, it's a treat. You turn the mean city scene into a sweet street down home blue. Feet tapping, trees clapping, branches in the breeze, slapping back beats deep and smooth. You've got to know you're the man. Go on, show 'em and damn.
There's a great video out there where you're showing you as a young busker, which I think the video is really amazing. It's interesting. And it features the showman Dan, which is on your album. What a great documentary vibe that video encases. And obviously we're going to play a cut or a segment of it.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I'm really curious looking back on it now, I mean, total fondness of that experience.
Always has been. The video you're speaking of is our lyric video for Showman Dan that we pieced together from some footage. There was a documentary made about the band at that time. Dan Fitzgerald started this band really because he felt like going to Jazz Fest. Dan Fitzgerald had the ability to create his own way of living. Because of that, because of his need to have his own way of life, because he needed, perhaps he needed freedom from judgment of his sexual orientation. Also, he was a Black American man who chose to live in Europe away from the inherently racist culture that I think he experienced. That's maybe even just a piece of it. Maybe it's just because he was such a creative soul and he needed to play music. But he started a band in 1978, 79 called the Lost Wandering Blues and Jazz Band. He painted a washtub bass white and the band name on it, and strung a rope out of the middle and put a broom handle on the other end, and that became a percussive instrument for him. He wasn't trained in notes, and he wasn't particularly good at studying music from that disciplinary point of view. But he knew a lot of songs. He knew especially a lot of old blues songs that are just that are kind of secret. A lot of people don't know Bessie Smith and Ma Rainey, and he had a way of mixing them up with different styles and sort of open-mindedness that comes with, let's just make something out of nothing. Let's create a band. Let's go to Jazz Fest. Okay, let's go over here. Let's go over there. And the freedom that ensued from that attitude towards life was something that attracted a whole host of people. There are just thousands of people that knew him or that played in the band and knew each other. I was part of it for about 2 years when I was a teenager. And that's when I dropped out of high school and I wanted to explore music. And I never thought that it would amount to anything. So I'm eternally grateful to that experience, because it's what gave me really the life that I have today. And I miss Dan very much. He was like a father and a true friend of mine.
Oh, let's go on to the levee and find true love. Listen to the brass bands through the second line. Pick a little guitar, spill a little wine. Hear the little babies whimper and cry. Make a little promise, learn how to die.
In 2020, we were, I guess, in the middle of the pandemic, but that was also a time where social injustice was happening with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. He wrote a song called "How I Wish." We had our own Freddie Gray issue here that was really traumatic, and in some ways, I looked at it as like, oh, we're going to moving. This trauma is going to make us move forward, where we're going to finally sit together and figure out how we can live a better way. And now I look back at it, I'm like, the pendulum swung. The idea of looking at this with emotion and with eyes open and with an idea to move forward has gone away. You got a good song out of it. So if you want to talk a little more about the song and how that arose.
Thank you for mentioning Freddie Gray and for trying to acknowledge that the pendulum, as you say, seems to have swung back in the other direction. I don't know if you have to call it pushback as much as it's the status quo. There's so much weight, so much heavy weight in a sort of rhetoric, I think, in America against public opinion. What I noticed in 2020 was that I never saw a place where we could be in a public space and talk about these things without it being controversial. Why is that? Yeah. Why is it that in America, because I know from leaving America that even in places, where in the world where there's fascism, there's intolerance in a lot of places in the world, and there's an incredibly horrible history that my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation lived through in Western Europe during the Second World War and before. There's a history of fascism that's right in your face, but we don't shy away from conversation in the public sphere. Say, for example, in the UK, in France, in Germany, there aren't a lot of things that you can't talk about. You can talk about them. In America, we're like prudish about conversation, about real feelings. I tried to write that song. I think I labored that over the song "How I Wish" more than any other song on the record, because I was hoping that if I just continued to chisel at this mass of monstrosity that I was trying to face during the period that we were marching for BLM right after George Floyd's murder on May 25th, 2020. And the more I chiseled, the more I hoped that I would get to the point of just surfacing something that's already there, the feeling that's there, the knowledge that's actually there underneath that surface that we all have, which is that's wrong. That is horror. It's catastrophe. It's terrorism. We should be able to act. We should be able to technically, talk about pushback. We got to push back against that. There's, as you say, a continuing catastrophe being can't find the word for it. I'll try some other way of saying it. As you say, there's a tragedy happening every day in America. You can find out more than you see in the media, more than obvious by watching the news. It's hard to find the information, but if you look at local papers and local news stories, there are usually young Black men that are being murdered in police encounters all the time. And I really think that the song is not necessarily going to do much against injustice on a practical level, but at least it it's an attempt to open the discussion. At least it's an attempt to say what's already there.
It sounds weird, like we're laboring over the words, but I think the shock of everything to me was that racism does exist in America. And now that Donald Trump, who ran the government, has given the okay sign to show this rampant hatred, like, you can go ahead, just let it out. And the shock that I have dealing with people who I see every day, and the things that come out of their mouth, and the thought process, and also kind of wrapping that around in a religious way. Like, I was like, it's mind blowing. And I don't know where to go with a lot of that. I would love to, as I continue to march, I'll continue to, do what I can, but it's just like the venom is out there, and it's all over the place, and and the green light is like, yeah, bring it on,
right?
Yeah. And it's like, so that's what was in your heart all along. So I guess now it's the opportunity to finally show it.
How I wish I could bring tenderness, leavening, and to bear the fact of each heinous act to which I've been a part. Oh, my black.
Thank you very much for joining me. You made it to the end.
No, I'm grateful to you for spending time with me today. And
oh yeah, what a treat! Been a fan of yours forever. I was in the trenches I worked that time period at WXPN, and you were fantastic. Everyone loved you, and you've constantly provided like great entertainment, and it's just awesome. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Take care.
Let's walk.
Let's walk. Let's walk. Let's walk.
Let's roll.